This is Amber with RV Homeschool, and I am so excited today to tell you guys about Theodore Roosevelt National Park and explain all of the reasons why you're going to love this park and you should really put it on your list, maybe even put it pretty high up on the top of your list. It's such an amazing place. We really had no expectation going into this park. Quite honestly, I hadn't even heard of it until we started deciding that we were going to try to see all the national parks. And it's in North Dakota. It's pretty high north, especially if you decide to go to the North Unit. It was pretty much in parallel line with Glacier. So we ended up having a few extra days after our Glacier trip and decided to tag on some time at Theodore Roosevelt National Park, and it was just a straight shot east to get to the North Unit. If you're heading on I-94 across North Dakota, then this is also a great stop, even if you're just going to hit up the South Unit, although I highly recommend hitting up the North Unit at the same time and making a whole trip out of it just to see Teddy Roosevelt National Park in its entirety. So this is the map of Teddy Roosevelt National Park to give you a better idea of these different units. As you're coming on I-94, you'll really run right into the South Unit, which is just off of the town of Medora. You need to take Highway 85 to head up north and go to the North Unit, but it's worth a trip, and it really, I think it's about 80 miles. It's not that far, but you probably want to do a night or two at the North Unit and a night or two at the South Unit. And we went through Williston coming over from Glacier beforehand. You can see here that the North Unit is pretty much a scenic drive that goes out to a lookout point. I believe it's about 16 miles. And the campground is called the Juniper campground. That's about at a halfway point. We stayed there, and we actually have a whole video review of the Juniper campground. So you can see more about that, and I'll show you that in a second. As you're driving out this scenic route, you're seeing kind of some of these badlands off on the side. So you have these grassy areas and just beautiful scenery. You might see some bison at this point in time. We didn't yet coming in, but there's going to be quite a few later in the video, so stay tuned for that. Oh, there might be one in the distance there. Our campsite was great. Like I said, it was the Juniper campground. It wasn't very much per night. I think it was about $14. They don't have any hookups or anything, so you can run your generator during the day, which we did because we were leaving our dog in there while we went out and explored. And then, of course, you have to have your generator off at night. It was fine, though. This was around the 4th of July. I think it was about the 6th of July when we were there, and it really wasn't that hot at night. It was fine to have the generator off and just open some windows, and it was comfortable. So that's usually our biggest concern when we don't have hookups is the AC situation, but turned out just fine. And one of the great things is that you have this big open space. It's first come, first serve, and we kind of lucked out. We probably got in at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and they were down to just 3 spots left. So we managed to snag one of those last spots, but it will fill up in the summertime. I don't know in the off season, but in the off season they might not have as much available. So that can be a little tough, I know, if you're traveling from a long distance and you really want to make sure that you have a campground when you get to your destination. But if you can, try to get in here, and if not, I think there were a few RV options at the next local town that was nearby. So that's somewhere to check out. As you can see, there's the other campsites that are here at the location where we were at. We then headed in our Jeep, heading out to the Riverbend overlook, and that is a great stop and a place to just stretch your legs and take a hike. There's actually the Caprock Coulee Trail, which goes for 4 miles, and part of that's along the ridge of the mountain. There's a lot of warning about bison because there are a lot of bison up here in the North Unit. But if you hike out this trail to the overlook, the Riverbend overlook, you can see the Civilian Conservation Corps building that they built in the 30s, and it's this beautiful log building that's still standing, log and stone, and it overlooks the amazing overlook that lets you look onto the canyon. And you're looking at the Little Missouri River that's underneath that kind of carves out the canyon, but it's just spectacular seeing all these badlands around you, seeing the view of the canyon. And at this time of year, it was really green and lush and just really beautiful. So I highly recommend doing this trail. It's a highly recommended hike for people to do, the Caprock Coulee hike. And then you can, even if you can't walk very far, you can just head out to the building and check that out. The kids loved hanging around it and checking it out, and then hiking around with walking sticks, so you can see some of the amazing views that we have here. As you keep traveling along that scenic road, you get to an area where there's a really good example of the bentonitic clay. That's one of the different types of geological features that you'll see here at Theodore Roosevelt National Park. And in the Visitors Center, I'll show you where they actually show you some of the different types of clay and rock and things that make up the parts of the park. We then headed over to do the Achenbach Trail, which would lead us down into the canyon by the Little Missouri, but there were some bison hanging out there that had a different idea, so we decided that was not the route to take and turned around and came back from that location and instead went out and took the scenic drive all the way to the end and hiked out to Sparati Point. And Sparati Overlook is really nice because you're looking at the canyon kind of from an end point and looking back at everything. So we got a nice pic there and got to see some cool views and headed on back. Now as we were heading back, we were about to hit a curve that went off to the right, and a ranger just started bolting across the prairie grasses, not running but walking very quickly directly towards us. And it was because we were about to run in face to face with a bison. So he led us off the path, and here we are walking through the grass just trying to escape the bison. And then later in our Jeep, as we're driving off, he kind of came a little bit closer down to the road, and we just missed having too close of an encounter with him. We headed back across the road that heads to the campground, and that's where the Cannonball concretions are. These are these big deposits from the river that have just built up over time, and they've turned into these giant boulders. It almost looks like a giant's game of marbles. And so there's all these places where the kids can hike and be by these big Cannonball concretions, and the girls just loved that. We decided to drive the scenic route back out towards the entrance to the park and to see if we could see any more bison, and sure enough, we saw a ton of bison. There was a huge herd just outside of the door of the Jeep. We stayed in the Jeep because they were right off the side of the road. We just couldn't believe it. So we just continued driving on, stopped at a couple places where they had these infographics at, and then eventually decided to turn back around and head back to the campground. And that's the point when a huge herd of bison were heading across the road. And we decided instead of waiting for them to come to us, we were going to drive ahead and then watch them pass from behind the Jeep. And that's what we did. And there were baby bison. And then you had the little babies. And it was so exciting to see these guys and the little guys as they are crossing the road. So if you want to see bison, you need to go to the North Unit, because we did not see a single bison in the South Unit. And in the North Unit, they do have some fencing that goes around the park, so they make sure that the bison are staying here and are staying safe. The one thing about Theodore Roosevelt National Park is that it is surrounded by oil fields, so you can actually see the oil rigs burning in the distance. But you can see the bison and beautiful sights while you're there. Here's some more details on the Juniper campground. One of the things that was nice is that they had ranger programs here, and on this particular night they were talking about bison. So we got to listen to the ranger talk about the native population of the bison there. We got to feel a bison hide, touch a bison horn. It was really a great presentation, and it was a way for the kids to be able to complete their junior ranger badge. You can see off in the distance here to the right, that's where the Juniper campground's at. Afterwards, we walked down to the Little Missouri River, and the girls just had a blast playing in the river. You can see the amazing landscape that you can view while you're hanging out here by the river. Again, this is the early part of July, and the water level was pretty low, and it wasn't traveling real fast, so it was pretty safe for them to be kind of near the shore. They weren't going out way deep into the river, and they had their life jackets on too, so we always do that anytime we're playing by water. You can see the amazing sunset here. The next morning we worked our way down to the South Unit, which is off of I-94. While we were doing that drive, which I think only took an hour or so, the girls finished up their Junior Ranger packets and we enjoyed the views. So that was a nice little break. The first thing you actually encounter is the Painted Canyon, which is a nice stop. You can stop there even with an RV. It's just off of 94, and you don't even need your parks pass to go in there. You can pull over here and see this beautiful view. There was also a ranger doing an outside talk and talking about the different layers of the rock that you can find here at Teddy Roosevelt National Park. The Visitor Center had some fun things, great books. We found an audiobook on Teddy Roosevelt, and the girls were able to do their swearing in as a junior ranger. The entrance for the South Unit is right there at Medora, which is a great little town. There's actually some street parking right here by the sign, and we were able to leave the RV here and then detach the Jeep and use the Jeep to explore the park. And that's a lot easier than trying to drive a big rig through the park on some of the windy parts. The first thing you come to is the museum, and so they talk about the different stone layers and things that you can find here within the Badlands of Theodore Roosevelt National Park. They also have a bunch of information about Theodore Roosevelt and his time here. So it's named after him, not just because he was worthy of having a park named after him, but also because he actually lived here. So you get to have a lot of that history about what it was like for him doing the cattle ranching and maybe some of the failures on that, but the success in growing his love of the parks. So it's pretty neat to see the visitor center here and learn about Theodore Roosevelt. And then just behind the museum, you actually go outside and they have relocated the Maltese cabin, which is where Roosevelt was first staying when he would come to this area while his ranch was being built. And you can still go and see the old ranch. But this Maltese cabin is nice because it's pretty small, but they have set it up trying to be period specific, and you can see what it would have looked like for him to be living in here. And they have great information on each of the rooms and how he would have lived here and what it would have been like. So this was a really cool experience to bring it home and bring it to life for the kids. Ultimately, Roosevelt had his Elkhorn Ranch built, which is a much bigger ranch, and you can access that from I-94 if you're heading up. It's not really accessible from the North or South Unit unless you're going to do these long 20-mile plus hikes, but there is a road that goes off of 94 that will allow you to head up there and see the ranch. The next place we went was to drive the scenic loop. If you had a nice long day, you could probably drive the entire loop, although it hasn't been open the last few summers. It was under construction when we went, and then I think they still have mudslide issues and the road isn't fully open. But if you start on the loop, one of the first things you do is go through this prairie dog town, and there are just prairie dogs everywhere. My kids were fascinated by prairie dogs because we don't really have them in the mountains where we're at. And then you can see another lower canyon. We saw wild horses there. They weren't getting that close to us, but we could see them in the distance. And of course, there's no bison in the South Unit. After visiting the park, we decided to spend some time in Medora, which is a really cute town. North Dakota and South Dakota really do a great job of having these fun touristy towns. They have the Western feel about them. This particular town had some outdoor entertainment. We were able to stop and get some lunch and enjoy the outdoor entertainment. They also do an outdoor show that is in the evening that kind of overlooks the canyon. It's supposed to be a really nice show. We didn't happen to stay here a night, so we didn't stick around to see that, but did get to enjoy the town during the day, and Medora is a great town. There's teddy bears all over the place, so the kids enjoyed posing with the teddy bears or the other Old West stuff that they had, and we even enjoyed posing with the Theodore Roosevelt statue. So hopefully this was useful in deciding if you want to go to Theodore Roosevelt National Park. I highly recommend doing it, and if you can, book enough time so you can visit the South Unit and the North Unit, because as you can see, the North Unit has a lot of amazing stuff. So if this was helpful, please leave me a comment or a like. Also, I would love to know what other parks you would like me to review. We have almost 30 under our belt, and this is a new format I'm doing, but if you like this, let me know which park should be next. Thanks!